I let go of the box, and it cracked as it dropped to the ground, breaking a brittle part of our new home. I froze, waiting to see what would come next. Her shrill voice pierced the atmosphere. "What the hell are you doing up there?" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and forced a phony grin before heading down the steps. "Oh, Helen, I apologize so much. It was an error. I'll tidy everything up immediately." Standing at the foot of the stairs, my mother-in-law had her arms crossed and her lips pursed. "Sarah, I truly believe that you ought to handle our belongings with more caution. This isn't a dorm room at a college, so you should know that." I faked a smile, telling myself that this was a fleeting moment. Adam and I would soon be living on our own and be free. However, Adam was nowhere to be found. It turned out to be a good thing that my husband had departed as soon as we got to his parents' place that morning, since we chatted about him. "Where is Adam?" I made an effort to sound impartial. Helen dismissedly waved. "Oh, his dad needs assistance with something in the garage. Men are constantly working on projects, as you well know. Even when Adam had actual work to accomplish, I knew he would always find other projects to work on." I exhaled. "Well, I'd better clean up the mess." Helen halted me with her words. "Sarah, please wait a moment. You might as well start going through your belongings now that you're up there. I cleared space in the spare room's closet for you and Adam." I blinked, startled. The visitor's room? I mistook our accommodations for Adam's former quarters. "Like nails on a blackboard," Helen laughed. "Well, honey, there isn't enough space in that room for 2 people. In addition, I now use it as a sewing room. The additional room will be considerably more comfortable for you both." I was about to dispute, but I restrained myself. This was Helen's home, after all. "Of course. Thank you for having us." Helen was moaning to herself as I ascended the stairs about how back in my day, things were different and how ungrateful youngsters are. I tightened my jaw and continued. The tiny, stuffy guest room had floral wallpaper that appeared to have been left in place since the 1970s. The room was mostly occupied by 2 slender beds, with barely enough room left over for our luggage. I sighed when the vase cracked earlier and started gently gathering all the broken pieces. Adam's voice echoed up the stairs as the front door opened. "Hey, Mom, Sarah, I'm back." Helen called out, "Come in here, sweetheart. One of my vases broke because your wife was playing with it. Why don't you go help her clean up?" I made a face. Of course, she blamed me for the accident. Adam appeared in the hallway, looking awkward. "Hey, honey, need help?" I tried hard to contain my frustration. "Where have you been?" He shrugged. "I had to help Dad with the lawnmower. You know that." "Right." I turned back to the mess. "Since you're here, you can start setting up our room. Your mom says we're staying in the guest room." Adam frowned. "The guest room?" I thought. "Looks like her sewing room is your old room now," I interrupted. He looked sheepish. "Oh, okay. It'll be fine. It's only temporary, right?" I stood up, throwing the broken pieces away. "Sure. Temporary." Adam grabbed my arm gently as I walked past to wash my hands. "Hey," he said softly. "I know this isn't ideal, but we'll figure something out. I promise." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when I looked into his eyes, all I saw was the same weakness that had brought us here in the first place. Dinner was called, breaking the silence. Adam took my hand, leading me downstairs. We were both walking into a situation that felt far from home. Later that night, after another tense evening, I stood in the small guest room, looking in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, tired, worn out, and beaten down. I whispered to myself, "Come on, Sarah, you can do this. It's only for a short time." But a small voice in the back of my mind asked, "What if it's not?" The world started to blur, like an old TV screen coming into focus. My eyes hurt from the bright, fluorescent lights, and the sterile smell of a hospital filled my nose. I blinked, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Sarah, can you hear me?" A man's voice, unfamiliar but filled with concern, echoed near me. I turned my head, wincing at a dull pain. A doctor with a clipboard stood beside my bed, his expression serious. "You passed out at home and hit your head. Your mother-in-law called the doctor," he explained. "Mother-in-law?" I scowled, trying to piece things together. Nothing seemed to make sense. My mom stepped forward. "Sarah, sweetheart, how do you feel?" I smiled weakly, still confused. "What day is it?" My dad answered, "It's Tuesday, about 6 hours since you came in." Tuesday? That made sense. But everything after Monday was a blur. "Where's Adam?" I asked, his name suddenly coming to me. My husband. I tried to picture his face, but nothing came to mind. My parents exchanged a look. "He's with Helen in the waiting room," my mom said cautiously. "Do you want us to get them?" The name Helen felt distant, and unease bubbled up inside me. I don't remember them. What's going on with me? The doctor stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "Sarah, it seems like you're experiencing psychogenic amnesia. This type of memory loss is often triggered by stress or emotional trauma. Your husband and mother-in-law appear to be the only ones affected in your memories." I closed my eyes, trying to focus. The last thing I remember, I was at work on Monday, but after that, it's all fuzzy. After that, the doctor made a note on his clipboard and said, "Interesting. If it's okay with you, Sarah, I'd like to do a few more tests." I nodded, still trying to figure out what was going on. They moved closer to the bed as the doctor left to set up the tests. "Honey," my dad said in a low voice, "do you have something to say? Is there anything that could have caused this stress?" I was confused as I looked at him. "What do you mean?" My mom grabbed my hand and looked at mine. "Sarah, we've been worried about you since you moved in with Adam and Helen. It seems like you've changed or pulled away. We thought it might have been just the getting used to it phase, but now..." It was hard to understand what she meant because her words stopped moving. I shook my head because I couldn't remember things. "I'm not sure. I don't remember." At that very moment, we heard a noise in the hallway. The sound of an angry man got louder as it got closer to my room. "I don't care what the doctor said. I have the right to see my wife." "Who's that in there?" When the door slammed, a man I didn't know and an older woman came in quickly behind him. When they saw me, they both stopped short. Their faces showed a mix of relief and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Sarah," the man said as he paced the bed, "thank God you're awake. We've been really scared." I automatically pulled back and pushed myself against the pillows. "Who are you?" The man's face fell, and his eyes showed that he was hurt and confused. "Sarah, it's me, Adam, your husband." The older lady took a step forward and pursed her lips. "My name is Helen, and I'm your mother-in-law. Surely you remember us." As I looked at each one, I tried to find a sign of recognition. Nothing. Something was off about me that I couldn't put my finger on. I said in a whisper, "I'm sorry." Sorry. I don't. I don't remember you. Adam tried to grab my hand, but I pulled away. When he touched me, something felt off, almost dangerous. He frowned and looked at Helen over with a mean look. Helen's voice was too sweet as she said, "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll help you remember. I'm sure everything will make sense once you get home with us." The words she used sent a chill down my spine. Get home with them. That thought alone made me feel terrible. I looked at my parents and begged them to help me in silence. That's when my dad stepped in and put himself between me and the people who said they were my family. He said it straight out. "I think Sarah needs some rest. It might be better if you came back later." Helen put her hand on Adam's arm before he could say anything. "Of course," she replied. "Sarah, we'll be back tomorrow. Don't stress over anything." I caught a flash of Adam's face as they left the room. I got a chill from the look in his eyes. I didn't see love or care there. I saw anger, but there was something even darker below that. As I got better, my parents were always there to comfort me, making the hospital room feel like a safe place. The peace didn't last forever, though. The doctors told me I was ready to go home after 3 days. The question was, where was home? Mom told me strongly, "You're coming with us, sweetheart," as she helped me pack. "Until you get your memories back, you need to be somewhere safe and familiar." When I nodded, I felt relieved. I was scared to think about going back to a house I couldn't remember with people I didn't know. Adam and Helen showed up just as we were getting ready to leave. I could not explain why seeing them still gave me chills. "Sarah, darling," Helen said, and her smile almost reached her eyes. "We've come to take you home." I moved closer to my dad without thinking about it. I said in a quiet voice, "I'm going to stay with my parents for a while." Adam's face turned darker. "That's not funny. You belong with your family, with us." Dad spoke up with a stern voice. "We are her family, and right now, this is what Sarah needs." You could feel the stress in the room. Helen put her hand on Adam's arm before he could say anything. "Of course," she replied. "We get it. But Adam, we'll be there every day, right? To help you remember." I felt sick when I heard her voice. I caught a flash of Adam's face as they left. He looked at me with a look of pure cold anger. I fell asleep in my childhood bedroom when I got back to my folks' house. I knew something wasn't right. Even though I was in this place, there was a problem. I told my parents, "Mom, Dad, I need to know the truth. How was my life when Adam and Helen were with me?" They looked at each other worriedly. "Honey," Mom said slowly, "we don't want to change your memories." "What did the doctor say?" "Please," I spoke up. "I need to know." Dad let out a heavy sigh. "We heard that you were sick, Sarah. Something about you seemed off, distant. She was always watching over us when we went to visit, and Adam didn't seem like the man you married." I got a chill. "What do you mean?" "He was controlling," Mom said softly. "He made decisions and always spoke for you. Helen? She was more like a servant to you than a daughter-in-law." I felt like I was hit hard by the words. Helen's critical voice, Adam's tight grip on my arm, and the constant feeling of walking on eggshells were some of the memories that came back to me. "I need to know more," I said, and my voice shook. "I need to remember." Dad leaned forward and looked serious. "Sarah, we have an idea. It's dangerous, but it could help us find out the truth." He told him about their plan to listen in on Adam and Helen's talks when they came to visit. It was an invasion of privacy, and might have even been illegal, but I didn't care at the time. I told them, "Let's do it." They came the next day, and we were ready. When they got here, every word was picked up by tiny micks that were hidden all over the living room. I did what I was supposed to do by acting confused and weak. I said in a weak voice, "I'm trying to remember, but everything's still so fuzzy." Helen rubbed my hand, and her nails were just barely in my skin. "Be calm, sweetheart. You'll be back home soon enough." "Yes," Adam said in a low, stern voice. "Where you belong." While they were leaving, I heard Helen telling Adam, "We need to get her back quickly before she remembers too much." We sat down at the kitchen table that night to listen to the tapes. When my dad hit play, my hands shook. Her voice was clear and sharp. "Be careful. Is she aware of how we treated her?" Adam spoke up, angry. "She's not going to. We'll make sure she knows her place." As I listened, each word made me more and more scared. The casual abuse, the plans to push me further away, and the threats that were barely hidden were all there. When the recording was over, I looked up at my parents with tears in my eyes as I whispered, "Oh God, what do I do now?" Mom and Dad's faces were grim. "We'll fight back. Now is the time to show Adam and Helen that they can't keep you down." Something changed inside me at that moment. Fear and confusion turned into a fierce anger. I agreed with a firm nod. My voice was stronger than it had been in days when I said, "You're right. It's time to take back my life." When I woke up the next morning, I was more determined than I had been in years. The recordings made my worst fears come true, but they also stoked a fire inside me. I was done being down on my luck. "I want to go back," I said at breakfast. Mom almost choked on her coffee. "What? No way. Sarah, you can't be serious." "I am," I answered with confidence. "We need more evidence." I thought for a moment and then jumped in. "I need to face them to remember everything." Dad had a sad face. "Be careful, sweetheart. What if they think something is wrong?" I stood up straight. "I'll take care of it then, but I can't stay hidden forever." We agreed that after hours of back and forth and careful planning, I would go back to Adam and Helen's house with a microphone hidden on my body. When there was danger, I would say a code word and my parents would come right away. My heart was beating fast as we pulled up to the house that I thought was my home. Adam and Helen were sitting on the porch with fake smiles and friendliness. "Sarah, darling," Helen shrieked as she suffocated me in a hug. "We've missed you so much." Adam's hug was tight, and even though he smiled, his eyes were cold. "Welcome home, honey." It was hard for me not to run away, so I smiled back. "Thanks. I'm glad to be back." The next few hours were a lesson in how to gaslight someone. Helen fussed over me, and her fake worry barely covered how impatient she was. Adam hung around nearby, and his presence was a steady threat that wasn't said. Helen pointed me toward the stairs and said, "You must be tired, dear. Why don't you take a short nap? I'll bring you some tea." I said yes, glad for the chance to be by myself. But as soon as I got to the top of the stairs, I felt very dizzy. It brought back memories of Helen yelling at me and Adam's tight grip on my arm as he dragged me up these steps. I fell and hit my head on the wall. With his hand on my back, Adam was right next to me in an instant. It felt more like a push than support. He spoke in a low voice. "Be careful, honey. We wouldn't want you to have another accident." There was a clear threat in his voice. For some reason, I was suddenly sure that my fainting spell wasn't a mistake. Like I said, it was our room, not the guest room. I sat on the edge of the bed, and tried to slow my racing heart. The walls seemed to close in on me, and memories I had pushed down for years were threatening to overwhelm me. I jumped when I heard a soft knock on the door. Helen walked in with a hot cup of tea in her hand. She gave me the cup and said, "Here you are, dear. This should help you relax." I only took a small sip because I was nice, not because I was thirsty. The tea had a strange bitter aftertaste that made me think of something bad. "Thank you," I said, putting the cup down. "I think I'll try to sleep now." Helen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. Good night, Sarah." The moment the door shut behind her, I threw the tea into a plant pot. It was clear to me that whatever was in that drink wasn't meant to help me. I laid down and tried hard to hear anything while faking sleep. I heard quiet whispers in the hallway. After what seemed like hours, Helen said in a whisper, "She's out cold." The sedative worked quickly. "Good," Adam said. "Let's talk about how to handle this now. We don't want her to remember anything else." My heart stopped beating. They gave me drugs, and it sounded like they were planning something much worse. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone and typed a message to my parents. Code red. "Come now." The bedroom door opened slightly as I hit send. I quickly shut my eyes to pretend to sleep. But my heart was beating so fast, I was sure they could hear it. "Poor confused Sarah," Helen said, and her voice was filled with fake pity. "Don't worry, dear. We'll make sure you never have to worry about remembering again." I knew I had to do something at that very moment, no matter what. They were planning. I couldn't wait to be saved. I needed to get away. It hurt my heart to lie there pretending to sleep while Adam and Helen talked quietly next to the door. Even though my body wanted me to run, I forced myself to stay still and listen carefully. "We need to move quickly," Adam said in a low voice. "Her parents are beginning to doubt her. If they start to die." Helen's tone of voice was cold and mean. "Don't worry. I know what to do. It will look like an accident. Sarah is so lost and still dizzy from her fall." I tried not to gasp. They had plans to kill me. The understanding hit me like a ton of bricks, and all of a sudden, the full weight of my situation fell on me. My life was in danger, so it wasn't just about control or mental abuse. I slowly opened my eyes as their footsteps faded down the hall. The rattle shook a little. Whatever was in that tea was strong, but I couldn't be weak right now. I had to leave. Taking it easy, I slowly got off the bed. Even though my legs were weak, I stood up. I crept up to the door and put my ear to it. There was quiet. After taking a big breath, I turned the handle and looked down the hall. Not fully aware, I went down the stairs, holding on to the handrail for support. As I got to the bottom, a flood of memories hit me. Helen's shrill voice yelling at me for every perceived wrong, Adam's tight grip on my arm as he dragged me from room to room, and the constant fear and feeling of not being worth anything that had become my daily life. I blinked away tears that hurt my eyes. That could be done another time. I had to focus on staying alive right now. When I heard them coming, I was almost at the front door. As I desperately looked for a place to hide, I felt a rush of fear. The closet for coats was my only choice. As Adam and Helen walked into the hallway, I jumped inside and shut the door. "I'll look upstairs. You look down here," Adam said. When Helen walked toward the closet, I could feel my breath getting tight. I leaned against the wall and hoped she wouldn't open the door. "Sarah," Helen asked in a voice that was too sweet to bear, "where are you, dear? It makes us worry about you." When the handle turned, I got ready to be shocked, but right then, there was a loud crash from upstairs. "Adam!" Helen yelled. "She's not here." She cursed under her breath and ran off quickly. I let myself feel better for a moment before getting back to reality. They knew I was not there. I had to go now. When I jumped out of the closet, I ran for the door and messed with the lock. As soon as I opened it, someone grabbed my arm and spun me around. Adam had a very angry look on his face. "Where do you think you're going?" I did not think. I just replied when my knee hit him hard in the groin. It hurt. I pushed him out of the way and ran out the door as he fell over in pain. As I ran down the path, the cool night air hit my face, and I heard Helen yelling behind me. But I didn't turn around to see her. I just kept running, my bare feet slapping against the ground and my lungs burning with each breath. I walked all the way to the end of the street without stopping. I finally let myself look back when I was out of breath. The dark and scary house loomed in the distance, but neither Adam nor Helen was following me. When I took out my phone and called my parents, my hands were shaking. "Dad," I choked out. When he spoke back, I pleaded, "Help me. Come get me, please." I realized how bad things had been as I hid in the shade of a neighbor's bush while I waited for my parents to come home. I was wrong about what I thought I knew about life. Not only did my husband and mother-in-law hurt me, they planned to kill me. I had tears running down my face from fear, relief, and deep sadness, but deep down, a strong determination was taking shape. Even though I got away, this wasn't over yet. Adam and Helen were going to have to pay for what they did. I made up my mind as my parents' car pulled up. I would no longer be a victim. I had to fight back to get my life back and make sure Adam and Helen could never hurt anyone else again. I got up, ready to face whatever came next with more resolve than ever. I was just getting started in the fight for my rights and my life. The law office felt like a haven, a safe place to be away from the storm. I sat across from Linda Pearson, the divorce lawyer my parents had suggested. To keep my hands from shaking, I clasped them tightly in my lap. Her voice was soft but strong as she spoke. "Sarah, I want you to know that what we're about to do won't be easy. Adam and Helen are not going to give up easily." I swallowed hard and nodded. "I know, but I can't let them win. Not after everything they've done." Linda laid out the papers in front of me. They included police reports, hospital records, and transcripts of the calls we had made. When I saw this list of everything, the abuse I had been through hit me again in a new way. Linda told me, "We have a strong case. There is a lot of proof of both physical and emotional abuse. We can also press for criminal charges because of the attempted drugging and what sounds like a murder plan." The words she spoke made my stomach turn. Still, the idea that my own husband had been trying to kill me didn't seem real, but the fear I felt was real. "What if they come after me?" I whispered, letting out the fear that had been following me around since I got away. Things went badly just as it looked like we were making progress. I saw Adam leaning against my car as I was leaving my therapist's office. His face showed a fake worry. "Sarah," he called out and took a step toward me. "Let's talk, please. Everything has gone too far." The cold made my heart race. He wasn't meant to be in this place. The order of protection. Stay back. As I looked for my phone, I warned, "I'm calling the police." Adam's face turned darker. He growled and lunged forward. "You ungrateful." When I tried to run, he grabbed my arm and spun me around. The old fear tried to hold me back, but something inside me snapped. I was done being down on my luck. I pushed him away with all my might. No! My voice echoed through the parking lot as I yelled, "You don't get to control me anymore." Adam fell backward, and shock showed on his face. We just stood there and looked at each other for a moment. The quiet was broken when a police car pulled into the lot, and its sirens went off. Adam's face changed from shock to anger. He hissed, "This isn't over," and then turned and ran. As the police came up behind me, I fell against my car and started shaking violently. I had one thought that kept going through my mind as I gave statements and called Linda and my folks. Adam was right. It wasn't over yet. That night, I couldn't get rid of the feeling of dread I had as I lay in bed at my parents' house, in the security of my childhood room. I kept hearing Adam's words, which were a scary sign of what was to come. A text message from a number I didn't know flashed on my phone. I opened it with shaking hands. "Sarah, you can't hide forever. I'll get you to pay for this somehow." I stared at the screen with a strong fear in my heart. Adam had found a way to get to me. Despite the protection order, there was no doubt in my mind that he would not stop until he got his payback. As I called the cops to report the threat, I knew the real fight was about to start. The court battles and divorce were just the beginning. The real test of how strong and tough I was still to come. I was going to fight Adam and Helen in court tomorrow. For the first time since I filed for divorce, I knew in my heart that it would be the hardest fight of my life. The courthouse was huge in front of me. The stone front had seen many fights. Today, it would be proof of mine. I took a deep breath to settle myself as I climbed the stairs. My parents and Linda were on either side of me, watching out for me as we walked up to the courtroom. Linda whispered, "Remember to stay calm. The truth is on our side, no matter what they say." I squared my shoulders and nodded. The truth had become my shield and tool against the lies that had kept me locked up for so long. As we walked into the courtroom, I saw Adam and Helen sitting with their lawyer. They looked like a worried husband and wife. When I saw them, my stomach turned, but I wouldn't let them see how scared I was. The judge told everyone to sit down, and then the fight started. Adam's lawyer used the fact that I couldn't remember things to make me look like an unstable and selfish wife. Helen wiped her eyes with a cloth. She looked exactly like a mom who was upset. Then it was our turn. Linda showed the proof slowly and steadily, including the records, the medical reports, and the statements from neighbors and co-workers. With each new piece of proof, I could see Adam and Helen's defenses going down. When it was my turn to speak, I felt instantly calm. Now was my chance to get back my voice and my truth. "Sarah," Linda asked, "can you tell the court about your life with Adam and Helen?" I took a deep breath and spoke. I told them everything. How unfair the criticism was, how lonely I felt, and how fear had become my constant friend. As I talked, I could feel the weight of the years getting lighter on my shoulders. "And the night you left?" Linda pushed. "What happened?" As I talked about that scary night, my voice got stronger with each word. "They gave me drugs, and I heard they were planning to make my death look like an accident." I told Adam and Helen. The whole courtroom let out a gasp. Adam's face was twisted with anger, and Helen's worried mask came off, showing the cold calculation underneath. As soon as I was done testifying, Adam jumped to his feet. "She's lying," he yelled, his face turning red with anger. "You ungrateful, after everything we've done for you." Adam yelled across the courtroom with a fierce look on his face. He was out of control. Even though the judge slammed his gavel to get everyone to calm down, he charged at me, his eyes filled with hate. It looked like time slowed down. I saw my dad get up from his seat, and Linda put her hand on my arm. The sheriff was moving to stop Adam, but I didn't flinch. At that moment, I stood my ground and looked Adam straight in the eyes, without fear. "No more!" I yelled, my voice cutting through the noise. "You don't control me anymore." Adam stopped moving. The anger in his eyes had turned to shock. At that moment, I saw him for what he really was. A weak, small man who got power by making people afraid and manipulating them. He was held back by the sheriff, and the judge asked for a break. I felt a strange kind of calm as Adam was led away, still yelling threats. I was finally free from the storm I had been afraid of for a long time. During the break, Linda pulled me aside and looked serious. "Sarah, Adam's mood swing may have helped us win the case, but it has also made him more dangerous. Anything could happen, so we need to be ready." As the truth of the situation hit me, I nodded. It wasn't just about winning in court anymore. It was about staying alive. My phone rang as we were getting ready to go back into the courtroom. A text message from a number I didn't know. "This isn't over yet. You'll pay somehow." Cindy and my parents saw the message, their faces turning pale, but I felt a strong resolve come over me. One thing Adam was right about was that this wasn't over, but I was sick of being the victim in this story. I shook my head no and pushed through the heavy doors. "Let's finish this," I said as I walked back to the stand. Adam's eyes were fixed on me, threatening to get back at me. I wasn't scared when I looked into his eyes for the first time. Instead, I felt his strong will. No matter what Adam had planned for me, I would face it. I had finally found something stronger than fear, the strength of my voice and the truth it tells. The judge brought the court back to order, and I sat down, ready for what was going to happen. The last fight was about to start, and I meant to win this time. The weight of my past and the hope of my future were inside the envelope, which made it feel heavy in my hands. I took a deep breath, opened it, and looked over the legal papers inside. The divorce is official. It was over. Some sadness for the life I had once dreamed of came over me, along with relief and joy. I felt free. "Sarah," my mom called from downstairs. "There's someone here to see you." With the divorce papers still in my hand, I made my way down, curious about who it was. I stopped moving when I got to the bottom of the stairs. Helen stood in the doorway, looking older and smaller than I remembered. "Hello, Sarah," she said, but her voice wasn't as sharp as it usually was. I came to apologize." I couldn't speak for a moment. Even though there had been a lot of pain and fear, she was still standing in front of my parents' house. "Why now?" I was finally able to ask. Helen had tears in her eyes. "I've lost everything. Adam is locked up. The truth about what we did to you is what made our family fall apart. I found out too late that I was the one who caused that damage." Helen told me all about her regrets, how she had realized she had made the setting toxic, and how she had allowed and supported Adam's abuse. It was strange to hear the woman who had been bothering me for years say she was sorry. After she was done, there was silence between us. I thought about all the times I had dreamed about this moment and what I would say to Helen if she ever said she was sorry. But when I saw the truth, I didn't feel anything. No anger, no pleasure, just a sure and calm feeling. With a calm voice, I told Helen, "Thank you for being sorry. May you be at peace. I wish I could help you find it, but I can't. Goodbye." As I shut the door behind her, I could feel the last of my problems leaving me. No longer was I bound by any rules. I was truly free. Things changed and grew quickly over the next few months. I got back in touch with old friends, started traveling, and found new interests I had never been able to explore before. I felt better and more sure of myself as I took on new challenges. But something was still missing. Sometimes I felt like other women might be in the same position as me and feel helpless and alone. I chose to start a support group. At that point, 5 women got together in a community center room for our first meeting. As I told them my story, I saw hope and recognition in their eyes. They knew they weren't alone. For the first time, every week more women from all walks of life joined our group. Each one had their own story of how they kept going. We cried and laughed together, and our hearts slowly began to heal. A young woman came up to me one night as I was locking up after a very intense session. Her tears had made her eyes red, but her jaw was set with determination. She said in a voice barely above a whisper, "I'm leaving him. I know I can do it now that I've heard your story. Thank you for making it possible for me." I felt warmth spread through my chest at that very moment. This was the reason I lived and fought so hard, not just for me, but also for her and everyone else who needed to know they weren't alone. That night, as I drove home, I thought about the painful, scary, and hopeless parts of my journey that had led me here, but also the strength I had gained, the help I had received, and the new mission I had found. I pulled into my driveway. This is my own home, which I bought with my own money, and has things that I chose. As I walked in, I looked at myself in the downstairs mirror. The woman I saw was free, strong, and sure of herself. As I smiled at myself in the mirror, I felt a deep sense of calm come over me. My history no longer defined who I am. My identity, my voice, and my life had all been reclaimed. I was now utilizing that voice to encourage others to follow suit. Not just a fresh chapter in my life, but an entirely new book. It was written by me. There were obstacles ahead, but I knew I was capable of overcoming them because I had already overcome my greatest anxieties. I sat down in my favorite chair, opened my laptop, and started typing. "Hello, I'm Sarah. This is what I wrote. It's my tale of hope, survival, and the value of finding your own voice." As it awaited the words to emerge, the cursor blinked. They were difficult to write, but they came out beautifully, offering everyone who read them and the guts to start over hope for healing.